Was there any comments or any? I'm just ready for receipt of them. Thanks, James Spray. Seconder. Thanks, Gary. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. We don't have a public forum this morning, so we'll now move on into the first item. Nicola from Hilton Waikato Tourism. Good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome to a cool, clear morning in Te Aroha.
Good clear morning. Right across the Waikato. She's a bit chilly out there.
It's winter.
But it's winter. That's right. Yeah, don't we get beautiful days. So good morning. Lovely to see you all. Have we got a presentation, please? Share. You got the document and you've picked it anyway, haven't you?
8.1. We've seen it.
And you've got the presentation as well. Sure. In your agenda pack?
Yeah, we've received it. We've got the
presentation as well. Okay.
It's all attached. Yeah.
All right. I'll pretend I can see it. Look, this is, we're here today, or I'm here today with the end of year financial report, end of year being the 30th of June. So a bit of a wrap up of all of the activities to undertake by our team from 1 July 24 through to 30th of June 25. I'll move to the second page of the presentation if you've got that in front of you with all the green squares and two red squares there. That's a new way of sort of trying to show in a visual way how we've met our KPIs, and in the case of the two red squares, where we have not met those two KPIs. Really proud, I'll focus on the greens first though. We are really proud that we've met all of those. There's some great KPIs here, and we're really pleased to have met most of them. Two of them, of course, one was to retain Waitomo and Aotearoa as part of our RTO whānau. Unfortunately, that did not occur, so that one is red. Really proud that did not affect our industry contribution KPI though, because obviously there's a lot of operators in those one district in particular that withdrew those operators from being able to contribute to our work. So really pleased that did not impact our ability to meet that KPI. Then the other really one is growing the domestic guest nights from 3.6 to 4.2 as market share. While we reached that goal of 4.2% market share, we did retain that 3.6. So while we didn't grow, we did not lose market share either. One of the business events goal, I wanted to really reach out and talk about that one. Our goal was to maintain the 6% market share of events held across the country. And we actually increased that to 8.6% market share. So really proud of that particular green square. Right. No, that's good. I realise quite how much I just talked to the visuals too. I've got my notes, but I obviously talk to the visuals a lot more than my notes. Then I move to the next slide now, which is all green. While these are not KPIs, they're not official key performance indicators, it is how we track our activities that we've achieved and performed and provided to our industry. So it's quite good to have some of these in front of you and share these. That large number, the 38 million, almost 39 million people reached through our activities. Very proud of that number. That's quite a massive increase on the 24 million reached last year. So that's through all of our digital activity, our PR activity, our marketing activity. People reach through all that we do. So overall, with all of those results shared through KPIs and the activities, while we had a bit of a topsy-turvy start to the year and we weren't quite sure of what was going to happen, we reduced our team and then lost some staff as well. Really very, very proud of what the team have delivered for our region and for our visitor sector. We've really, I think, achieved quite a lot given that topsy-turvy start. It was actually quite a pleasant experience writing this report because it did feel very much At the beginning, it was like, oh God. But actually, with what we've delivered and what we could wrap into that report was really quite a good moment for us too to realise and reflect on all the work that we've delivered. Thank you. We are going into the next one. You'll recall from the 6-month report that we talked about the Get Lost campaign. We were going all in on a bit of a cheeky campaign this time. Instead of all the smaller campaigns we'd run in the past, we adopted a really big bang campaign. Get Lost, a little bit edgy, a little bit cheeky, a little bit on the edge. But this one was talking to the mature audience of being lost in the mighty Waikato, while the children are at home wondering what they're going to do for a babysitter. You may not have seen it because you're also not our audience, right? Your residents, you don't see some of this activity other than what we'd shared with you. So the results are there in your board pack and your council agenda pack. Two that really resonated for me, I've provided all of them because different things, different numbers resonate for different people. The two that really resonated for me was the click-through rate, the CTR rate there in the middle. So for us, for this campaign, we achieved a 12.99% percentage against an industry standard for the travel sector of only 0.9% average. So that means someone has seen the adverts, they've clicked on it and gone through to the information behind it. Likewise, viewability on the TV on demand piece, that one in the middle, 99% viewability. That means 99% of the people who saw that advert come up before they were watching a program actually watched it. They did not push the skip button. I know I'm a skip button person. So it was really nice and pleasing to see 99% of people watch the video. So every metric used across there indicated that this campaign was exceptionally successful. We've gained viewers and clicks on our website. They've spent more time on our website. So the upcoming spring campaign will take a similar approach, but targeting families. And then we'll build on Get Lost further for the autumn ahead as well. So we'll continue with that approach. Australia. How great was it to see that plane land on the 16th of June?
It was beautiful.
Wasn't it?
Day.
Beautiful day. Beautiful to see the plane on the ground. The clapping, the cheering in the terminal was quite spine-tingling. It was something to actually see it's here. It's no longer talk, it's here. So when we started this financial year, we didn't have this in our plan, but we've absolutely kicked into action to support that. The first activity, which I've shared in this the top there with the blue billboard, was supporting the airport team with those electronic billboards in Brisbane and Gold Coast. And the number of impressions, and I did report this at the 6-month report, but we'll reiterate it, was 77 million impressions of those billboards along the highways of Sydney, Brisbane, Gold Coast. And Sam Mack there was here in Hobbiton Movie Set, our own backyard in March. He actually went to 5 locations in New Zealand, all of them here in our central North Island, celebrating the Jetstar arrival. So for us here in the Waikato, he was at Hobbiton Movie Set, and then he went to our other neighbouring regions. 7 live crosses directly into the Australian breakfast TV viewership, with 3.6 million viewers on TV, plus then Facebook, Instagram and Twitter. So really great coverage of what we do and who we are. And he loved Hobbiton, running around in bare feet on a nice morning, a frosty morning like this morning. I don't think he'd get his shoes up. The Instagram story in the middle is from Australia influencers Has and Loz. We hosted these two as partnership with Jetstar earlier in the year. The content captured was for Jetstar's inline in-flight entertainment system. So if you fly Jetstar, they do have a QR code that you can scan to watch in-flight entertainment. So Has and Loz there in the middle created the content for that, a video, as well as then content for us and our channels. So combined audience for that particular post there, 270,000. Next image on the right is from it with the gardens overview. Is actually from our own Meta and Google campaigns that we ran. The one into Australia has only just finished, so we haven't got all of the numbers yet. We ran 2, one talking to Waikato locals, which is a little unusual for us, but we took the approach of bring your Aussie mates over while they're here, treat them like a local, take them here, show them this, do this with them. So it was a little bit of a different angle for us, but it was well worth that approach and making sure that our locals are around. Yes, it is. The second one, which is just finished, dovetailed with a similar messaging, was to target Sydney and Gold Coast residents with a come on over. Once we get those results fully through and measured, then we'll be able to share those later. The one on the right is Janice Fung. She's an Australian foodie writer. So she came over to experience all that we've got here in the mighty Waikato. She arrived in through Auckland, so experienced the mayhem of Auckland Airport and Auckland traffic before heading south. We gave her a jolly good time here in our region, including a second breakfast at Hobbiton, which is that post. And then she departed actually on the first flight out of Hamilton. So while we were there cheering the arrival, she was actually doing her baggage scanning and moving on through the airport for moving out. And she's even posted some of the activity from the airport on her channels. And we've certainly got great reach through her. Sounds very using, doesn't it? Through her channels. So there's been a lot of Australian activity, and we've got quite a healthy plan for the coming 12 months as well to continue with that. I'll go to the next one, please. Photo shoots. I did try to have these. These are actually 2 new videos that we've had filmed during the year. I did try to actually embed it in the PDF, but once I PDF'd it, you couldn't watch it. So the links are there as well, I think. And these are part of the regional video that I've provided you the link within your report. So while we have a photographer or a videographer here doing photo shoots, doing video content capture, we always utilise that content as far and wide and for many opportunities. So while he was filming for the video, the brand video, we've got these 15 and 8-second snips to be able to share on social media. So these 2 are quite stunning with Wairere Falls, which we're taming down the use at the moment while it's closed, and also the river here as well. Next one, please.
Just looks very hard to tell from our document as to where your next one is, because it's not so much a slide, it's just our document, it's our pack. Just how it came as a PDF in our pack. So watch the next one.
No, that one's fine. Thank you. The viral content. We love it when posts on social media go viral. So this video of the plane landing and the Te Amutu Kapahaka group welcoming our guests on the 16th of June. You know, good news. We always share good news on our social medias. This was on Facebook and achieved 297,000 views. It's been shared 241 times, and that was at the time I wrote the report. So it's probably already going up as well. But you know, great cut through, great audience, and great viewership, and a lot of comments, a lot of sharing. So we've had a few of these go viral over the year, which has been fantastic. And then onto that regional events fund. Thank you. So I've been talking about this for the last 4 years. This was part of the government's COVID recovery funding, the regional events regional event fund, and we led that piece of work on behalf of Waikato, Rotorua, Taupo, and Rupehu. So collectively, over those 4 years, $3.75 million was provided to 48 events, and then a lot of capability building as well that every event was able to participate in and lift their capability. Those 48 events had an attendance of that 532,000, 220 million of economic benefit returned to 4 regions. So turning 3.75 million investment in events returns benefits to our regions. Really proud of that piece of work. Collective across 4 regions, absolutely. And of course, our own Halfling Marathon was started with this funding, and it's got some great foundations now, and it will continue in movie set. So that's been a fantastic piece of work to be involved with across the 4 years. And then the thank you slide at the end. Look, overall, as mentioned earlier, bumpy start at the beginning of the year, but I really can't, I guess, reiterate enough just how proud of the work that our team have pumped out over the year. And we're really looking forward to the year ahead. We're already 20 days into it, and I've got some really great plans for the work that we do ahead.
Thanks, Nicola. Any questions? And I was there the other day when we were heading south for breakfast there, heading south for conference, and of course we were delayed with the fog in Christchurch with places. But it was great to see the people checking in for the Jetstar flight, and it left while we were there, and while we were delayed. So no, it was, and the booking's been really good. Like
what we've heard, we don't get the numbers directly, but through the airport, school holidays were full seats, full planes.
Yeah.
Both ways to both destinations and in. A little bit lighter at the moment, as you'd expect.
Well, school holidays would be heavy because people will be going over with family.
Yeah. We understand that they are tracking, however, ahead of the business case that Jetstar had based their decision on. So that's great news.
I think the biggest thing is it's so convenient for the Greater Waikato to pop in there.
So a story I heard last week, and it's not your district, unfortunately, but I'm going to use it anyway. Friend of a friend surfing in Raglan. He came out of the water, and two guys were, hey mate, how do we get out to that surf break? Got talking. They'd just landed from Gold Coast, came over for that left-hand surf break, the Mecca, an hour and 5 from landing on the tarmac to being in the water.
Wow.
How good, right?
It's just you're not in a big queue. It's just
how good is that?
Yeah.
And
it's those opportunities.
And that's the sales pitch that we use when we're at Explore, talking to trade, talking to media. Land at Hamilton, you're 40 minutes into your trip to Hobbiton, you're right there, so it's absolutely part of our sales pitch.
Well done. Yeah, I guess it was acknowledging the change in the funding for us all. We're all trying to tighten our belts, and it's all go.
Sure is.
And Hobbiton continues to be a shining star in our community, obviously, always adapting their offering.
That's good.
Yeah, it's
refreshing when there's such a successful operator, be it an event or an operator, that never rests on their laurels and think, right, we've done it. That's it. That's all we need to do. Russell and Shane and the team absolutely have constant improvement, constant new offerings, always looking for the next improvement, the next thing to do. And that's a real credit to them and the team.
So there's often local organisations go there as well. Service clubs do their changeover into the Rotary event there. It was great. So just to be a part of it is amazing, and the economy that spins off it. The builders, there's always work there. That's great.
Yeah.
Right. Well, would someone like to move that the information we received? Move James, seconded James Sainsbury, seconded Gary. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Yes, carried. And thank you, Nicola. Thanks for taking the time. It's an easy drive over.
Going?
It's the old story. It's an easy drive over, isn't it?
It's a beautiful drive over, especially on a morning like this.
The driving up to see the mountain is
beautiful
always
view coming this way.
Yeah. No, it's very picturesque.
Nice to see you.
Thank you. Right, we'll now move on to item 7.1. Kelly and Ken. Good morning.
Hey, I'd just like to introduce Ken Morris to you. Ken Morris owns the business Ken Morris Solutions and Advisory, and he's currently supporting us with a number of areas, including risk, finance, organisational excellence. We're very lucky to have Ken and his skills and knowledge. He was previously the GM and Deputy CEO at Waipā District Council, where he had a very large portfolio, including finance, risk, governance, and a whole lot of other things as well. So he's currently undertaking a lot of work in our risk space, and he's here to talk to you today about our strategic risks. So hand it to you, Ken.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks, Kelly. And good morning, Mayor Adrian. Good morning, councillors. Good to see you on this frosty morning. Okay, so look, approval of top risks. I guess I'll largely take the paper as read. You would have noticed the very colourful table in the appendix, which is what it's largely about. But look, some covering comments in the cover report. But look, just picking out that this is really this is a key part of your enterprise risk management framework. And this, I guess, was the first thing off the blocks. in terms of reviewing this and making sure you had a really solid base for assessing and managing your top risks in that whole strategic space. Some further work is happening in the project risk space and in the operational risk space. So that will continue over the next little while. But look, returning to these top risks, so this has been developed with a lot of work on the part of the executive team, significant work on the part of senior staff, and also some review by the Risk and Assurance Committee. And this work comes to you today with the recommendation of the Risk and Assurance Committee. I guess the importance of this piece of work is it enables the executive team and RAC and in fact you as councillors to keep a really close eye on these top strategic risks of the organisation. And in that regard, I would suggest that the focus areas going forward are on those key risk indicators that are in the table, because they I guess demonstrate the effectiveness of the controls that you've got in place for those risks. And also on the new controls that you are looking to develop out in that right-hand column. So reporting going forward to executive and to the RAC on a quarterly basis, we'll be picking up on how the implementation of those controls are going and on the effectiveness of the KRIs. And then the only other thing I would just point out is the risk appetite setting. So you'll see that for each of the risks there is a risk appetite setting. So I guess that's I guess the tolerance that you people have got in regard to that risk. And that's what we're aiming to achieve, to introduce sufficient controls to arrive at that level of appetite. And you can see in some cases we have already got there. In some cases we are planning to get there with the introduction of these new controls. And in 2 or 3 cases, actually, we're saying actually we don't think that level of appetite is achievable. It just doesn't make sense to throw money at controlling that risk. In some cases there are risks that really you just cannot control on a basis. Okay, but those are my comments. I'm very happy for any questions at all.
Yeah, I guess following on from that, just around being up the risk appetite and the cost of managing those risks. So are there any implications around budgetary costs with what you're doing here to manage? Is it under control? Is there any additional expected going forward?
What I'd comment on is with the Keen's guidance, we've been able to get, if you like, some coherence in the organisation around our focus. And the executive team have been heavily involved and also our managers to ensure that the KPIs or the indicators that are in here are in play and that we are keeping an eye on them. There's actually, I don't think there's anything in here that we haven't already had in a program. I think there are some actions that we have in here that we're making sure that we will, if you like, operationalise or be regularly reviewed. But there's no immediate budget implication of it. More about the team focusing their energies appropriately.
Just let me get that reassurance. Just to understand that, yeah. And I guess there's some things that might happen and they might happen when they might happen. Being ready to having a plan ready, especially in emergency management. That's always the critical thing where we risk being found wanting. It's by to what degree is the terminology, I think, is what Basil Morrison always told us, wasn't it? Basil Morrison. Like that's, I still remember that my first term as councillor when he spoke to our morning session. So that is the challenge of emergency management. You go so far. Dane.
Yeah, not so much a question, I guess. It's a little bit of an observation and a comment. I just when you see nearly every category being outside of appetite, it's somewhat of you, I don't know, flogging a dead horse a little bit. It just seems like there's no end to where you're going to get to. But I thought it was ironic that, a lot of these things that need to be done to get inside of what our appetite, is just required more labour, I guess, to work through it. The ones that was within appetite, so I kind of see enough people to work on it, but the same one that the one that thinks the people to do the job is the one that's okay. Like, it was just a little bit of a But I just, when I look at that, when I think that so much of that stuff is, well, it shows that it's outside of appetite. I almost feel like you need to, I don't know, rank the things that are outside of it and then start working down a list. Because to me, that kind of seems like that thing that I did on the board when you've got A, B, and C, and you're trying to work on everything at once and nothing gets there. I almost think like this is great, but it needs to be focused into something that can work down a list, because otherwise you're trying to tackle 100 things at once, and 5 years from now we'll be looking at the same red boxes. So whether that's right or not, I don't know, but it's a little bit of an observation, I guess.
I can comment on that. And I think that goes to the point I've made about coherence through the organisation. Because you're absolutely right. There's a whole heap of things that we want to do and we could do, but this is about making sure we do the right things. And so, for example, and just to the point about being outside of risk tolerance, we as an executive team went through and gave our view. And I'd be fair to say that we could have taken the view to say they are intolerant, but we have high expectations of ourselves and of our organisation. So we'd rather reflect the position that we think reflects your expectations as well as ours. To the point about ensuring that we have the right things in front of us. So one of the outcomes of this process has been the executive team have said, let's make sure every team knows that these indicators are and improvement actions are in their work plans. And we're going through a process right now, because what we're saying to our team is this is a critical risk, all of our teams. We need to make sure that these are on your radar, and it might mean that we have to look at some of your items and with you perhaps say, let's not focus on that, let's focus on this. So this is where I think in terms of coherence, and actually the real, in my opinion, I understand the theory of risk management, but the real skill, in my opinion, is to operationalize it at every level. And this is giving us the basis to do that. And to your point, there's a critical focus, make sure it's in your work plan, and we might have to drop something else on. This is what the work that Ken's led us on is enabling us to do. Now, look, this will evolve. This is it feels to me, and I think to the executive team, a degree of coherence that we haven't necessarily had before. We've had the theory, but not necessarily translating it into the decisions that need to be made at the coalface. I'm excited by it, but I would have to admit that the appetites are not where I want them to be, or the executive team want them to be, but we're certainly focused on moving them.
Because I think it's, I respect the fact that, you put these tolerances quite high and you're holding yourself to quite a high standard. I guess the other side of that coin, though, is that if you don't make progress on it and you're kind of almost running around knowing that things are outside of tolerance and not getting them to where they need to be, then that in itself is a risk,
Yes.
So you have to make sure that if you're going to hold yourself to that high tolerance, and it sounds like you are, but you need to be able to make some progress on it too, because otherwise it's a line in the sand that you don't ever get to.
Yeah. Well, to that point, it'll be interesting to see this and review it next year.
Yes.
Yeah, and through your worship, actually, that's exactly what I was just going to pick up on, was to be really clear that the focus of this is the next year, and then there is a reset. So there's a really good chance to have another look at this again this time next year, and look, we could be as an organisation in quite a different place. So yeah, the priorities can be reset. And I think the other thing to bear in mind is this is the first time that we've really done an exercise like this. Matamata-Piako. With risk management, there's growing maturity over time. So this is very much the first effort, and I'm quite confident that over the next 2 or 3 years, you will be in quite a different place in regard to maturity of risk management.
It's mind-bogglingly comprehensive. The comfort I have is that it's actually down there, right? So you've identified, right? Because if I was to say to you, without that, what about risk? You wouldn't be able to. Right? That was, right? So now we can follow. That's how I see it from a risk.
Yeah, and it will be interesting as it progresses. Yeah, because there's quite a bit of outside of risk.
Stan Betkin has also developed some really good reporting for our Risk and Assurance Committee as well, which will continue to report on key risk indicators that you're seeing and also to progress on those mitigation controls. So yes, we will actually be able to make that visible for you.
Because I guess some of the mitigations will be relatively straightforward and procedural. It's just getting us visible in each department instead of raising that visibility, because some of it they might be doing partially, but not really. It's invisibly being done. And I think that will be the thing, is how much is actually in the back of the mind that's not visible at the moment.
100%, and that tension of having to report regularly creates tensions through the organisation to make sure that we keep this uppermost in the market.
Great. Well, there's no more lights on. Would someone like to move the information we received that we approved the top risks 25-26? Moved Gary and seconded Julius. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Gary, thank you.
Thank you.
Good to see you. Right, we'll now move on to item 7.2, which is the proposal of water supply to Matamata Country Club. Samantha and Stu's with us this morning.
So, Mayor and Councillors, I'm not going to go through the report, but just a very high-level summary. We've received a proposal from the Matamata Country Club. They've got a retirement village as you're coming into Matamata behind where Home Garden Centre is. They have requested that council supply them with water, and they are zoned as a rural centre, and some part of it is rural. So our policy generally is not to supply anyone with water. They obviously requested, and they put some money forward as well, that we provide a permanent connection for them. Council staff have gone through the options, and as highlighted in the report, it does set a precedence. So that's quite a strong factor in making this decision. But also there are a number of changes and things happening in the free water space. We've got Waikato Water's going well. We've also got quite a lot happening in the RMA space. And then that means potential changes in the future around some of the zonings and also some of the services provided. Because as you know, wastewater, it does depend a little bit on how big your section is as well to be able to cleanse your own water. Set that up. So council staff have actually put forward a recommendation that we look at a temporary connection for Matamata Country Club, about 2 to 3 years, which will allow council supposed to make a decision within that time if they want to take it on. Alternatively, that we can say no, that it's not going to be a permanent connection, and you will need to provide your own water treatment on site. Some of the details we'll still have to work through. I think what we talked about also is making sure that we can, as far as possible, mitigate some of the issues around if council does supply, how can we actually pull back and how do we, and that is one of the risks around that. And we did talk about looking for a bond as well, so that we collect the bond and they will get that bond back. Obviously, while they're connecting, they will have to pay for the water usage, but it was a little bit tricky. Obviously, the developer would like a permanent connection, but we feel to try and maybe try and promote that growth, and knowing there's a lot of changes happening, that a temporary connection of my board, but it's something that is your choice. We can say no.
Yeah, I'm comfortable enough with the option, but I just
And myself, I can see the headlines now floating. Yeah. The council cuts the water supply to old people. But so there's a little bit of, I suppose, a little bit of what we've just been talking about, risk, a little bit of risk, reputational risk going forward, even though we would have a clear agreement with the developers. But and I thought when I was reading through the report, I was worried that, just making sure that water was taken away from other parts of the town. So I think I saw somewhere that we were a bit low in some of the fire. Was that what I saw somewhere there? So, but this doesn't make that worse.
It's not going to compromise our flows.
And that was my kind of when I first started reading the report. That was my, I shouldn't say concern. Well, it was concern. Yeah, I will say concern. Wanted to make sure that wasn't impacting on the legitimate users of that water. So yeah. But I mean, it just needs to be crystal clear to them. But it's supposed to be crystal clear that is it is a temporary solution until they get their things sorted. I was actually surprised to see how many villas were.
Yeah, they're progressing quite
and
rapidly.
people are already in.
Yes. Well, they've got a water supply there already.
Yeah, correct. But they have to meet the new regulations and all that.
And really just agreeing with everything that Deputy Mayor said. I also saw that headline 3 to 5 years. And so I think, but I guess the reassurance is really about more the consequence for them if they don't pull out. So the loss of a bond or an increase in rate, like there's some other trigger there, I think is really the best way that we can manage that part of it.
Yeah, and I think it's also because their development is staged and they've got the land use centre they're around providing their own water source. It's also tying it into those staging as well to make it very clear. Well, you still things don't work. We can tie it down to what we can't develop any further.
So
the point around that as well.
That's the part that I found reassuring, was understanding that there's like consequences on them, even if the council doesn't pull back, there's consequences in terms of future development or costs to them, whatever. Is really the only way we can manage that. So yes, I agree. It's tricky. There's a lot of balancing here, but I think I'm comfortable with all the scenarios of the recommendations. Nice work.
So
I see here its willingness to contribute approximately $5,000 per unit to be confirmed. Would that be confirmed before any agreements entered into?
Sorry, just for clarity, that was the proposal if we were going to provide a permanent connection. So there was something we still have to work through the details of the agreement, but the bond wouldn't be as high, but we'd have to work through what kind of is appropriate for a bond that it's enough to give it back. That it's going to be contributing to the new water source and help with that.
Peter.
Now, I'm curious, in a couple of years' time, will council still be making these types of decisions, or will it go to the collective supplier?
We will continue to have an influence on urban growth. And one of the questions that 2 weeks ago we had a workshop with our planning team, which brings into question what that form of our urban areas will look like in future, and the potential encroachment of rural and provincial. So we will still have an influence on that. We would still be the shareholder of the entity that will be providing the service. It'll be interesting. So yes, we have a role to play, and part of this is about ensuring that our responsibilities and the things that we need to take into consideration, including changing planning rules, that we have the ability to move either way. An observation I'd make is that from a utility entity, one of my drivers is to spread my fixed cost. So my driver as a utility entity, back to my shareholder, might be, actually, I do want to provide a lot more of these because it actually makes a lot of sense as long as I've got the water, and I think I've got the water. So that's all part of the moving feast in here. So that's why I support the recommendation from the team, because it enables us to get a sense of where our growth strategy is, what it's telling us, and areas of preferred development. But remembering areas of preferred development might be different than what actually gets triggered by the new legislation. But it just buys us that time to balance everything out. I think what would look really, in my opinion, quite silly potentially anyway, if they go ahead and put in their water supply, and in 3 years' time, that area is all part of our urban area. It just,
That's the.
so those are the balls that are up in the air from my perspective.
I just wondered, do they apply to council for a permanent connection, say, in 2 years' time? Might they just bypass council and go to the other entity and say, look, we've got this water pipe bringing water in, can you guys sort this out for us rather than council?
What we will be sharing with our entity is our growth strategy, the needs of what we see and what they need to be doing. So if you like, it's part of Susan's team and another entity will be having the same conversations. And to be fair, the CCO might decide that, yes, we want to do this anyway because we think we've got enough and it actually makes that financial sense. But we've been talking about this. I think the big concern we have about precedent is all the other rural residential properties that could be supplied.
Yeah.
And hence the bond is a form of, dare I say it, a barrier for a period of time until we have our, if you like, everything in line from our perspective.
So if there was another development, like a fast track development, like in West End,
Well, perhaps I could ask Susan to talk about what we've had to do in response to the dashboard.
Yeah.
Just as an illustration.
Yeah, that would be helpful.
Yeah. The fast track is a different process, and what we've been asked to look at is the difference with fast track too is when you have multiple different owners of sections, it gets quite hard. You can't have a private supply that then you have to set up a corporate and the regulator. That becomes much more of a council issue because it is actually a public supply. But yeah, whereas this application is we're going to be a bulk supplier to one single corporation, and they're buying water off us. Fast track application, we don't really have the same kind of mechanisms to say, no, it's rural, you don't join up and you've got to do your own thing. So we have been looking at modelling and looking at that impact has on our network and working through some of the upgrades or some of the work that needs to be required to service.
It's not only network, it's supply as well, isn't it?
So my interpretation, what you just said, is that the Ashbourne would be we have to take it up and do it. If they were to
Developer levies would provide.
Yeah.
And the principle we've followed with Ashbourne is all of the cost, the rest of the community should not be penalised because your development's going ahead. So we've already got zoned areas that have yet to develop. So the principle for example, just an example, there's a trunk main that potentially has to be upgraded as a result of that particular development, if it were to be approved. That might not be developed might not have to be replaced for another 30 years, but it's using up some capacity. We would argue that cost should not be a penalty on the rest of the community, that the development should handle that cost. So as far as practical, the team are trying to, and it's not a perfect science in this, as far as practical with their master plans, the team are trying to identify the effects of a fast growth development on already planned areas and trying to ring fence cost to that area.
Understanding when the network upgrades are required, who's contributed to it, and how we can apportion the cost. Because our policy is that developers pay for those costs, not the ratepayers.
so then we look at Morrinsville, and we've got the Loveridge thing. They don't get out. No. So would we be in a position then of setting a precedent that they might say we'd like water to be supplied there? I'm just trying to get a
And I think any developer, with that proximity to town, asks the same question. And from our perspective, we're at the moment, and the CCO will have a particular view too. We actually don't have a problem providing water. It's just making sure we've got it and that the cost is ring fenced on the development. Because we're really good at treating water and spreading fixed costs is really good too. So, and I could give you an example with that particular one, and I don't think I'm talking out of turn, but that particular development, the Loveridge one, if it were to go ahead, meant there was going to be a significant sewer trunk main development upgrade right back to Allen Street, I think. We said you would have to pay for that.
And the same with water. I suppose it's not quite as easy. We don't have the line going right past there and having the capacity. But yeah, you can pay for another water line going up and
And of course,
I'm just looking at the.
and of course, the country club is right next to town.
Yeah, well, it's,
Whereas the other block's not. The Loveridge one is
Well,
unless it comes down.
when it comes, that's where I'm coming from. Is that
Yeah,
it's
but
gonna
it started from up the top out in the
I know,
country.
but it will be on Snell Street
Yeah.
before
Yeah.
you know it. All right,
Yeah.
and Snell Street is part of town.
Correct.
And I guess to my point about urban design or urban form, local authorities and utility entities are in this because it makes sense to have economies of scale and to deliver a service at a particular quality. And I suppose that's what I'm saying about Loveridge and about this one here. They are our community. So if there's a better option for both parties, the community and themselves, it kind of makes sense that we don't take that out. All we're asking for at this stage is time to work through some of these issues. But you're absolutely right. The principles apply to any of our towns.
Couple of things. I would guess that if you through the process of this, you would know whether they're actually going in the balls in as part of your 3-year, before you. So they're not going to wait until they're 6 months out from their deadline and then start putting balls in. You would know before that whether their intention is to actually comply and have it going. Possibly, or bond might work. The other way you could do it is that you could say if any water that we supply after a certain date is 3 times the price of whatever it might normally be. So then there's no bond has to change hands.
Businessman.
Yeah. And the last thing I was just a question more than anything. So I've heard it lots of times that the water in this catchment is fully allocated, right? So how do these guys then end up getting a consent for 200 metres cubed a day if the water is fully allocated? Like, where does that allotment come out of if we're not getting any more water, consent to take out of the ground in this area? How does that work?
and that one.
The question, Dave.
So, water is all allocated in Piako River catchment area, but water is not all allocated in Wild Village catchment. There's enough water to allocate that catchment.
Caleb.
I like Councillor Jew's idea. Leads on to my question. How are we breaking down? They're going to pay a bond. If we're charging them for the water, what method are we using to charge them for the water? And are we charging by X number of cubes, or are we charging by the ton? And then how is that going to work? Okay, so currently the cubic meter rate is set to recover the equivalent of a household in the normal urban area. So if somebody's on a meter but not getting the annual rates charge, they should in theory pay about the same amount. However, in this case, and I see a reference to the report that they would use less than what an average household would otherwise use. I think that's part of our negotiation to make sure that we recover our fixed cost portion for every cubic meter they use. So effectively, they'll have a meter at the boundary that we can calculate exactly what they're using. But a good point you raise is we do need to recover our fixed costs through that period as well, as much as possible. Just to the point about which I really love the innovation about using pricing to manage demand. I'd love to be able to do that, but I don't think we can do that at the moment. But differential pricing is possibly something that's going to come through with water metering. Peter, question following up from David's comment.
I mean, if Matamata has extra capacity, if we can treat more water than what's used, then does anybody ever sit down with the Matamata and say, well, look, we can extend the water supply area out, then it's going to generate, positive revenue for the council by doing it?
We haven't done it to that extent, but we have done master planning. So we've looked at our demand over the next 30 years and we've looked at what zoning we have. And I suppose that's why this fits in a little bit better, because it is that temporary short term. We know that in the medium term, we need another board with more southern development coming on. So having, I suppose, kind of a temporary, a bit of temporary water does work in with our long-term plan. But we do, we haven't looked at, I suppose, at the economics of that, but what we're looking at is how much water have we got consented, and what's our population growth, and where our zoning is at the moment, and what we can service. But we haven't made that I suppose recommendation that we want to start servicing all rural residential. I think that is quite a big call that potentially we will have to look at, and depending on how some of the planning changes, maybe something through our growth strategy, we could look at that. But at the moment, we haven't done it. That economic assessment. We've done it more on population growth and demand.
I mean, but it's useful too, I suppose, that from the developer's point of view, I don't know, but I'm assuming it's probably cheaper to get council water than it would be to treat.
Well, they're a water supplier. Yeah, because they become a water supplier, so it does. Share.
Option 2, it's got under legal agreement conditions for termination. Why would we, as a council, why would we need to terminate? From our perspective, what does that cover?
That's just ensuring that they do have their own supply and we can switch off the connection. Yes, so that we know we're supplying them. Yeah.
They have a current consent that they will supply their own water, so this is contrary or sort of an addition to their consent.
So I think if I can just add to that response, and I may not have, I probably haven't made it very clear, but and Susan just alluded to it, this whole question of rural residential, at the moment, our policy approach is no, we won't. Anything that's existing, we're not extending. So that policy position in the context of our form of our towns, what the planning requires and what our growth strategy tells us, the answer to that question might be, yes, we will, in which case we continue. But if the answer to that is, no, we can't, then from a policy perspective, we have been very clear with the applicant, and they know this. They know this. We've had this conversation with them, that will be potentially one of the outcomes of the work we do.
Okay, Russell.
The previous councils probably remembered for 25 Waihau Road, and we probably always will be. I just wonder with this decision, and I do support option 2. Are we setting a precedence that we will be remembered for? And the other question is 3 years versus 2 years. Would 2 years be more appropriate than the 3 years, especially at the time? It's more of a statement than a question.
Yeah.
Well, you're on the money in terms of precedent. Absolutely. That's why it's temporary. Absolutely, no question. I think the time frame we were looking at was we've got to do the growth strategy. We've got the legislation coming in at the moment, and it'll be in place by the end of the year. And we'll be then looking at the output of that legislation against our growth strategy. I think the growth strategy towards the end of next year. I think we're due to finish that. So all of those things come in. I think that's probably one of the key drivers for us in terms of being able to answer the long-term question. So, I think that's personally, I don't mind personally, I don't have a problem with either of those. I think the conditions that we put on it and the clarity of what the consequences will be, or what might trigger a change, those are the important parts, but I'm comfortable with whatever term the team recommend.
Yeah, I think it's been also allowing for that construction period and actually put that water treatment plant in place. So it's just maybe giving a bit of consideration as well once we've made our decision, and then they will need that time to construct the treatment plant and provide that water and see that as a water provider. Yeah.
And I guess just in summing up, the other thing is we don't have water meters in our community shed. We all know that 20% savings made, and that helps cater for growth in the long term. I think the other thing around the precedent also is that future growth strategy is really important to inform us, because there is some growth. There's obviously rural residential, and it's effectively residential. So, you know, the day will come where, well, what about people that want to develop out past that? You know, that is occurring. So the day will potentially come where a line will go past a lot of properties that are currently potentially not supplied. And of course, that's where you get that tension. But we're not there yet. I think the future growth strategy is the key document that will help inform going forward. So with that, just noting time as we're moving on, is there anyone prepared to with recommendations going through?
I am. Sure.
Okay, so you accept preferred option number 2. You have to go through all 4 recommendations. This will go for seconder. So it's moved Caleb, seconded James Sainsbury, that the report be received. We accept option 2 as a preferred option, and we resolve to authorise staff to negotiate with the developer and enter into temporary supply agreement with the developer to provide water for up to 3 years for the development. And council resolves for the staff to recover a reasonable cost of providing temporary connection to the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you. Okay, welcome back, everyone. Right, we will now move on to item 8.2, which is just the report that all councillors will receive from LGNZ. Monthly report. Is there any discussion? I think it's fairly self-explanatory. Covers off a few things. Whatever that thanks, James. Don't think it's any feedback. Move James Thomas, seconded. Caleb. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against. Carried.
And it's just going to be out next.
Okay, well, tomorrow we can move on to your one if you like, so while they're getting them.
Sure.
Yeah, item 8.4 is just the successful grant recipients for the 24-25 financial year payments to the Pride Place Community Led Initiatives Grants Policy.
You're happy to take that, Brent.
Yeah.
I put all the information in town and list to you yesterday, which I can share on Teams, which had the applicants that had lifted their funds and some that are still waiting, but they're not quite uplift right away.
Yeah, so that's all good. So is everyone happy with that? Thanks tomorrow for that. Someone happy to work that. Thanks, Russell, that we have the information we received and that the grant, you can see the grants, Pride Place Initiative approved. So moved Russell, seconded Dave. No, all those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. Okay. I could to move my mayoral report actually. Item 8.8. Comments about managed to throw in some photos this time. I don't get photos myself. I like to take photos of things for me too. I think the Indoor Bowls tournament in Te Rapa there a few weeks ago was excellent. Great to see the facility used. Yeah, another couple of months. The airports day was really interesting, learning about other airports and just the economic drivers. Airports aren't really money makers, it's what they create for wider benefit of the community is the key there. So I'll move that my report be accepted. Go to Senator, please. Thank you, Sharon. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
It's carried. Right, we will now welcome RJ. Sorry, we're ready for you, RJ. We just jumped a few other items and yeah, we've got the financial.
I've got apologies from Lani as she's unable to be here today. So
Good. Got the other key man here anyway that knows all the numbers inside out. Right. Good morning, RJ.
Good morning, Kira. Through you, Madam Chair, I take that my financial report is taken as read. We're happy to try our best to answer any questions that you might have. Thank you.
Questions? Yeah, Peter. I'll pop your light on. It's not on.
Just curious about my learning. The operating expenses. It talks about finance costs of 387,000 in budget. So what generates that excess over the budget amount? What is that? What generates that 387k more than we thought it was going to be?
Sorry, did you want to read it?
If you don't mind.
Is it more interest or?
Two, it's a function of two things, the amount of the debt and the actual interest rates that we pay. So with our capital program, for example, we have a capital program on finance team predict what's likely to actually be done as opposed to what's in the program, and we borrowing a program. But the major change would be the interest rate change from our estimate. So I mean, it's like any business, same function.
I mean, interest rates are coming down and they're not
coming
through to us.
Yes, we do lock in interest rates. We have a spread maturity profile and spread to try and ride out and average out the highs and the lows.
Thank you.
Questions?
Off the back of Pete's questions, I know that you get your interest rates forecast from, so what is it? Is it cost, like, I assume it costs to get those forecasts from those people?
We have a treasury management advisors because we've got instruments such as interest rate swaps, and we are not. Lania is more expert, RJ is more expert than I am in terms of interest rates, but in terms of a business of 70 plus million, we want to get that right, and small changes in interest rates can make a big difference. So yes, we do pay our treasury advisors, and from that they give us, I think we have at least a monthly meeting with them about how we're tracking. So yes, the long answer is yes, we do pay them. In terms of value, we do provide a report to the Risk Insurance Committee on the effectiveness of our policy. You might take different views about whether or not our strategy has been as effective as it could be. What I would say is, from a corporate perspective and from an accounts perspective, decisions are based on, in my opinion, appropriate financial expertise input. So, in other words, having our treasury management advisors is almost an insurance policy, but a prudent action.
Value is a good word rather than cost.
Yes, yes, exactly. The process, absolutely.
So I asked questions earlier, so just want to go through, because I think we do need to look at this and ask questions, because we're heading to the end of the financial year and where our trends are going and what it looks like for next year, that we've picked up where there's some overspend, how that goes. So I'll just go through the things that I done. There was a comment that the EPHs, the spending there, they are self-funding. The answer back there is there was an overspend, but there was a reserve there. So that's operating within its parameters, just to, I got that assurance. The rubbish recycling, we always get caught with the CPI in our contract and where that lags, where we get hit with an extra payment, and just wanted to understand whether we build in anything into our targeted rate, because it seems to there always seems to be a catch-up cost.
Yes, yes, and there are two elements to this. There's the transfer station contract, and then there's the curbside collection contract. I was responding, I was looking at the June numbers, and this is the May report. So in my view, the curbside collection, which is the bigger contract, had capacity for that final claim, but it comes down to what is the claim, which is a formula. It's a calculation. It's not we want. It's an actual calculation. But the transfer stations were definitely higher than budget and beyond any CPI adjustments. So just to be fair, I need to interrogate that a little bit more as to why that was the case. Because it had been tracking okay. So, and I know we had some one-off costs as we're setting up the takeover, but I just wanted to make sure there's not some capital in there that should be somewhere else. So again, a long answer. I feel we're okay on the curbside collection. The transfer stations is above budget, and prima facie, that's where we're finished up. In other words, our budget was not enough, but I'm not absolutely certain as to the why. So I'll find out the why.
Of course, we've taken over the
and that's been my driver, because one of my drivers, because in our annual plan, for this year, we have set our transfer station operating costs at the same level as what our budget was, no increase. So we do it for that. So that's why there's an additional impetus to understand, well, why do we go over in 24, 25?
I'll just,
Can I
yeah,
just,
go.
on, because it's on waste.
Yep.
And it's really not so much the capital that we're spending on the likes of, and I noticed the 161 on Waihao roading upgrade. Just where my concern is that how much are we going to spend before we make a decision on what we're going to be doing?
Well, that's a very fair question. We had, even when we were proposing those budgets, we interrogated that as an executive in the preparation of the LTP. What's been done is to address primarily health and safety risks and the configurations and the potential problems that could occur. And look, it doesn't change because we run the sites, that we still have the same responsibility, but we've been trying to get some of these things done for some time, and now they're being done, which is great. You know, we've upgraded our way bridges and configuration, for example, and we're seeing slight improvements in our revenue because we think we've got a better system to collect all the revenue. But there is a balance in there. You're absolutely right. The balance is we don't want to overinvest in the event that we've another decision made. And exactly right. So there's, as I say, we've asked for that assurance that we are doing work that
has to be done.
It has to be done.
And just going back to community facilities around spas, there was no spent there. That was the geyser, obviously, needing the rebuild because it's obviously calcium buildup.
And what we became aware of during the year is that the requirements about that rebore change in regulations, which meant that we had to do it in a different way, and we had to. So that added some more operational cost on, and that was the primary driver for that. That we had the way the procedure is different. I don't think we know what the procedure is, but I was alerted last year to the fact, oh, it looks like this is going to be a lot more. Well, we have to do it as per prescribed process.
Yeah, just an observation. When we set our budget last year, we knew that NZTA hadn't finalised what they would fund, so we took a risk there, and it's about $200,000. So that's not significant, but just wanted to highlight that's part of that, that we're aware of that shortfall for that reason. I wanted to get my head around in strategy and engagement. It talked about a 1.6 million for surplus. Right, it wasn't quite correct to term it that way. So, Benara, will you?
Well, I think the reference in the notes, and RJ, sorry, what happens is if our operating budgets as a total have any form of surplus buying, because we are a net borrower, we just borrow less. So the actual reason for the surplus was actually in that particular activity was a couple of extraordinary, the main part of it were a couple of extraordinary revenue flows.
So water transition costs.
Water transition costs. Now we actually had costs and we applied those costs. So we actually had costs to apply against. But in that activity, it shows as a surplus. But if we look at our bottom line, it doesn't matter what activity it is. If we have any, and we have a bottom line surplus as it make, any surplus, it means we borrow less at that point in time. I don't know if that makes it clearer or I've confused sense. I'm not sure.
For you, Madam Chair, if I might just elaborate, heading on to Manaya's point, it's the activity in which we bring forward the expenses are happening in other
areas. Yeah.
So overall, we are we break even. We're not overspending and all that. It's just that the activity in which we recorded tax, the income shows that there is huge surplus.
Correct.
So we I've had a conversation with our PPG team that we need to be vigilant and do a bit better in terms of recording it in the individual activities so that we do not have these sort of comments coming in.
Yes.
So I'm still learning through this.
Yep, no, that's great. No, it's just I picked it up and I thought, well, this doesn't align. So no, that's great. Thanks for that, RJ. And just one other thing, just for stormwater, because we were going to do CD and Lawrenceville, that hasn't been done, and it's because there's a cost. It's come out quite high, so staff are looking at other options.
Exactly. I think the estimate is, and I meant to check it, but this number's stayed in my mind for some time, so I think it's right. I think to solve all of the problems at the CPD, it's about 9 mil. So we don't have 9 mil. So the team have had to look at how we can get best value for the money we do have. You know, and there've been some good things done already. And
out the pipes, mate.
You know, that maintenance side of it. There's also some capital improvements we can do, but we have a very difficult problem to try and address, caused by gravity and topography, and so that's why we didn't just charge off and do stuff. The team has said we have to regather on this and work out where the best value will come from.
So this is quite a significant capital, or possibly significant capital thing that was, really never identified until the shit hit the rain hit the fan.
No, I'd be honest. I think you'd say
they knew about it. But
we knew that it wasn't an easy fix, but we had the obligation to get more information to justify that view. But also the other thing is, and I'm not an engineer, but my observation is, so you can't fix the big problem, but you can do small things that will deal with the more recurrent, the events that are more likely to occur.
So could we just have a brief report on what the likely, you've talked about those dollars, right? Could we have a brief report at some stage that says what the position is and what the likely options are going forward?
Absolutely, and I think probably the time for that, if you're okay with that, I'm due to bring back the new project schedule for 25 in August, 25, 26 in August.
Yeah.
The team are finalising that, and there is stormwater stuff on. So I think that'd be a good content. Is that appropriate?
I'm happy. Yeah, I just
It's just
I just need to visualise it.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, so just probably one of the best things is that the learnings from this last year is just the over optimistic gathering of fees and charges has distorted our budgets a little bit because I've overestimated our fees and charges. So we need to be less optimistic and be more realistic because again our budgets overspent because we've overestimated, being too optimistic. But
off the back of that one, we get to with the wastewater treatment charges for commercial stuff.
Oh, the trade waste
stuff. What's that?
It's still in play.
Yeah.
It's still in play. The discussions occurring with the commercial providers, and that was pre-sludge issues being fully known. So it had signalled that to one of the major contributors as well. So all I can say is we're having the conversations. We haven't finalised yet.
covers things off. Peter, going light on there. That was your earlier question. I feel good.
Well, I've just got one more. I was just wondering, I see this report that we get in that all the time.
Yeah.
And there's parts of that where I have no clue.
Yeah, no.
I just wonder if we could put in a workshop maybe to just answer some questions about what some of that stuff means.
It'll go into the onboarding.
I looked at it, just keep going.
Yeah, get it in every one, and I'm like, is there anything in there we need to?
What value is it of?
Yeah, so
people.
We could maybe just understand that some parts of it.
And it'll be put in the onboarding for the new council.
So as soon as I knew Lani was going to be here, I said, right, I better get into this and make sure I can answer any questions. But I understand it's again, I have faith in our process and systems, but the information needs to tell you quite clearly that and I know the tickets are there, but it is good to understand those graphs. So we'll definitely pick that up for the next financial report.
No, that's great. Thanks. Well, Jay, do I have a mover to approve the report? Move Dane, seconded Caleb. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you. Thanks, RJ.
Thank you.
Yeah, I thought I'd email this last time, so I just put you right on the spot. So
Much appreciated.
makes it a bit easier. Yeah. Thank you. Okay, we'll now move on to item 8.5. Industry. So that is the CCO performance monitoring for the airport. Are there any questions? We haven't got anybody here fronting it, but does anybody have any questions? And I might go to answer, so I can answer it potentially. I'd someone like to move that April 20. Steve, it's moved James Thomas, seconded Gary. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against, carried. And then the next one is 8.6. And that is for CoLab, the same thing, the statement of intent. We took the CoLab office for the first time yesterday. We met for the subcommittee meeting. Cambridge, I think. So someone would like to move that report be received. Move Bruce, seconded Sarah Jane. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Okay, moving on to the minutes, 8.7.
Yes, Mike, a large thing the report is very brief, but if I would like to mention two things in particular. Daniel and his team at the IENs, there's been a huge amount of determination, pride, and commitment to get us to a stage where we have at least 2 yearly audits, because we've been in annual audits for some time, and it's a massive process for the team. And Daniel, as you know, Mary Adrian has spoken to Daniel, the team have worked very hard to get that process, the audits moved out. So I just wanted to particularly acknowledge that, and also the team that have been involved in taking over the refuse transfer stations. We had a lot of contingency plans in the event that things fell over or and you know, we did it, and the transfer didn't work well, but the team, our team that we brought on, of course under him, Rob and Mario, they, with the assistance of Louisa and her team, they've worked, and Ron, sorry, they've worked really hard to make a seamless transfer. And I do also have to acknowledge SEL, because they were incredibly cooperative in that whole process, very professional. So no news is good news in that area, and I was pretty pleased that the transition has been smooth today.
And the transfer stations are always tidy, you know, they're doing a great job, and have done, and long may they continue. Russell?
Yeah, just on the transfer stations, I had the pleasure of going there a couple of weeks ago to drop off, and I got talking to the staff there. I spent about 2 weeks there, but and they were so proud wearing their shirts. They were excited to be part of a team that was respected, and it was really great to see. And this lady I was talking to was just so over the moon.
That's great.
That was really good.
Nice. Nice feedback. Really good feedback. Any questions for Benai? Yes, Gary.
Have these only just recently come through?
Yes.
Yes. And so they believe that some of the documents they will be RMA.
The trigger point was the elections. The notices had to be served within a certain time before the elections. So they have, and now we go into a statutory process. So Ali and I will be meeting tomorrow, I think it is, to work out our strategy on how we deal with this.
I have a question on those as well. What impact will the new RMA legislation have on those agreements?
So this is about our relationship and how we work with iwi. That won't change necessarily under the new legislation, but to be fair, there are things coming through the legislation that may have an influence on our process in some sort. It won't. I don't believe it would take away from the need and the requirement to have the relationship, but the what might change a little bit. I think, and actually I just crystallised, this is about the how to an extent, these agreements.
Clinical reminds you of our
it aligns with what you?
The risk profile that we talk about every month around relationships.
This isn't all about iwis though, is it?
No, well, some of these actually live out, like Ngāti Hako is in our district,
Yeah.
just at a boundary with Puraki. Are all these others, like obviously Rakawa is South Waikato, and Ngāti Pō obviously is Perry's.
Interests based on.
Yeah, but you still have that kind of whenua. You still got a marae in our district, which is part of the one whenua. But yeah, Tamatera. Whereabouts are they? Hauraki, so they aren't actually in our mana whenua forum though, are they? Oh, they are? Oh, right. Okay, and then there's it's the same, they're in that space. Because we never hear those iwi mentioned, so that's where I need to ask the question. So when do these expect to be?
So there's a statutory process that requires a hui first, and then I think we have 18 months. We must have it complete by. I've had some discussions with a Hauraki representative, and there's certainly it appears the view that we can do a lot of work collectively. So we're not. There's different ways that you can do this, but I suspect that many of the clauses of the document will be same for each of the iwi, with some potentially some bespoke aspects to it. So.
Because I guess it just because some of them don't actually rely in our district, changes the dynamic, but it might be the catchment.
Yes.
Be an interest in the catchment. Good to understand.
No, I'm happy to take through any other questions.
Any other questions, or if there's no further questions, have one move the report be received, please. Thanks, Caleb. Seconder Russell, all those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Okay, then just some other minutes that have come through. I've got the Hauraki Rail Trail minutes, board meeting minutes from February. Just these are these ones that I'm bringing through now, just for transparency. So we've got item 8.9. Is there any questions with regard to that?
How much do we contribute to that?
Now, this is my it's around about 230,000, of which it's broken into two components. There's an element which is about all three councils pay the same amount towards the operation and strategic management of the whole cycleway. And then the other portion of it it's probably close to 50-50, but I have to check this. The other element is on actual maintenance done on our cycleway.
Our part of the trail. Any further questions? Does someone like to move that the see? James Sainsbury and sector. Thank you, Dane. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. It's carried. See, and then the final one is the other external minutes. So there's future proof. Original transport. Images. So I'll move that information be received. There's no questions. Seconder, James Thomas. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. With that, that concludes our business for the morning. Thanks for your input today in today's meeting. There's been some good strategic discussion, and I'll now declare the meeting closed. Thank you.